Broadcasting from the Tasman Lake Lodge Studios, this is Sporting Journal Radio. Presented by OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. Now here's your host, Bret Amundson.
All right, welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you for tuning in on this station right here by downloading the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts or streaming it on demand at sportingjournalradio.com. Or maybe you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble. If you are, thank you very much. Make sure that you like and share this. If you like what you see, share it with your friends. Like us, tell us, comment below, smash that button, whatever it is. We don't think you should apologize for being a hunter or an angler. We hunt and always will. We fish and always will. In fact, we put it right on our sweatshirts. We say it. And since we had some wintry weather here this week around the region, we're wearing the white hoodie in honor of it. Dan Amundson is right over there wearing a black hoodie. Dan, how you doing?
Not too bad. You got the ice fishing hoodie on.
Yeah, that's a good one. And ice fishing's not far away. But if you want to pick up an iHunt hoodie or an iHunt mug like this, go to sportingjournalradio.com and show off your love of the outdoors and your unflinching attitude toward hunting and fishing, that you're going to do it, and you always will, and you shouldn't have to apologize for it. Go to sportingjournalradio.com and click on store. All right, today we're going to talk about fishing. We're going to gear you up a little bit for the ice fishing season, but we're not quite there yet. In fact, we're going to talk whitetails yet, since the hunting seasons are still going on for deer. In fact, we're gearing up for the Wisconsin gun season here in just a little bit. So in honor of that, we're going to retell the story of the Jim Jordan buck. This is an amazing deer hunting story, and it's got Minnesota and Wisconsin as a part of it. Dan, I know you know parts of this story. You're gonna freak when you hear it, because it's so cool. Because first of all, it's from not far from where we had a cabin growing up in northwest Wisconsin. And the deer was a world record buck, and at one point it was thought to have been shot in Minnesota, around Sandstone. So it was shot around Danbury, but at one point people thought it was shot in Minnesota. So it's a wild story, and we've had that story here on the show, but it was probably about back
in the magazine days.
It was 378 shows ago. It was our 100th show that we aired this story, and it's 479 this week, I think. We're almost to our 500th show. So it was a while back. So we're going to retell that story for you coming up later in the show. We've also got updates from the field for waterfowl, walleyes, whitetails, pheasants, and more. So if you're looking for a report on all of those things, we'll have it for you in just a little bit. Dan, who's our sponsors this week?
Yeah, this week, as always, we've got Haybale Heights Campground and Resort on Devil's Lake. Plan a trip to Devil's Lake at haybaleHeights.com. Ottertail Lakes Country, find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com. Lake of the Woods Tourism, plan a trip to Lake of the Woods at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Tasman Lake Lodge, plan a trip to Tasman Lake. Catch giant lake trout and pike at tasmanlake.com. Our favorite app, OnX Hunt, know where you stand with OnX. And then Mid-Migration Outfitters, hunt geese out at the famous Lac Pearl Refuge in heated pits and comfortable blinds. Learn more at midmigrationoutfitters.com. And then Prairie Sportsman. Watch episodes anytime at prairiesportsman.org.
So we had a holiday this week, Veterans Day, of course, and that was right around the same time that we had some wintry weather roll through the region. And it brought up images and stories of that great Armistice Day Blizzard back in 1940. It killed 49 people in Minnesota, and about half of those were duck hunters, a lot of them out on that Mississippi River. According to the story, if you look it up on Wikipedia, this is what they've got. Now, the storm wasn't predicted, so nobody expected the weather to change. And this is before having, apps on your smartphones and all that back in 1940. And when the storm began, many hunters took shelter on small islands in the Mississippi River. And the 50-mile-an-hour winds and 5-foot waves overcame their encampments. Some became stranded on the islands and then froze to death in the single-digit temperatures that moved in overnight. You got to think, this wasn't predicted, so they didn't dress warm. It was warm that day, so they probably didn't layer up, wore light clothing for duck hunting. Because for those of you that don't duck hunt, you work up quite a sweat, setting decoys and whatever, trudging through water. So a lot of times you dress lightly, and maybe you'll put on layers once you're sitting. But if it's a warm day, you'd probably dress lightly out there. They were not prepared for these conditions. Others tried to make it to shore during this storm and then drowned. Duck hunters constitute about half of those 49 deaths in Minnesota. Those who survived told of how ducks came south of the storm by the thousands. and everybody could have shot their limits if they hadn't been focused on survival. Now, how wild is that? Like, oh man, if we weren't trying not to die, we could have shot a limit of ducks.
Well, it's like if we wouldn't have had to get rescued off Red Lake. We caught our limit of walleyes. It happens. It's,
There's that. But that's just like that's a true duck hunter right there. Well, god dang it, we could have shot our limit of mallards if we hadn't just tried not to die.
That's why we get excited about that foul weather.
So, obviously a tragic day, terrible in the history, and every year it comes up. Everybody tells that story of the Armistice Day Blizzard. And then you think about, okay, well, it's Veterans Day. Why is it called the Armistice Day Blizzard? Well, the story of that is that back in 1919, that's when they decided to declare it Armistice Day, because that's the year earlier when, I believe it was a year earlier, 1918, when World War I ended. So they made Armistice Day in 1919. Well, then when World War II happened, they're like, well, it's a war again. So after World War II, so in 1938, they made Armistice Day a legal holiday, and then we had World War II, and then in 1956, I believe it was, they said, well, we can't call it Armistice Day anymore because we had, another war. So they made it Veterans Day to honor all the veterans from all the wars, and then that became the holiday that we know today of Veterans Day. So it was Armistice Day before World War II, and then it was changed after World War II. So from ducks to bucks, it's been an interesting couple of weeks, Dan, because the bucks have been in rut. We've watched a couple of our target bucks get shot by the neighbors. Once the gun season opened up, we've been bow hunting around here, trying to shoot a couple of the nice bucks that we've had. We lost a couple of them, but we've had a kind of a fun time watching some of the young bucks, because we've had a couple little ones that have been rolling around the area, including I had a fork come through. He'll be a nice deer in a couple years. But he snuck through behind me, and then I thought I heard him lay down not far from my stand. There's a stand of frag or cane or Phragmites, whatever you want to call it. And I thought I heard him lay down in there because I heard like this grunt, like the noise that I probably make when I lay down to go to bed at night. And I'm like, gosh, did that buck just lay down? And then that was in the morning, so I came in and I went back out and sat in that stand that night, and I was sitting there. Nothing was happening. Finally, across the way, a couple hundred yards away, I saw a buck kind of running around. So I thought, well, what the heck? I'm going to see if I can rattle this buck in. And as soon as I hit my rattle, all of a sudden there's this big crashing from that frag in front of me and splashing and footsteps. So I'm pretty sure I woke that little buck up by rattling at him. Scared the heck out of him.
Probably thought he just woke up in downtown Minneapolis. Yeah. People are fighting everywhere.
Needless to say, he got the heck out of there. But we've had a couple little bucks rolling around. In fact, we saw a spike. Dan and I were both hunting kind of near each other. We saw this little spike running around in front of us here last night.
Yeah, he was chasing a doe, and the doe had two fawns, but I think I said it was like watching a dog have the zoomies, because they kicked out into the field, and I could just see all of a sudden they're going east. 5 minutes later, here they come west, dead sprint, and then they're just going back and forth. And they came back, the doe came back alone. I couldn't see the fawns, and the spike was not far behind. And then they had kind of a cool encounter. You could see here they started chasing each other around. So the little spike might have gotten it done the other day. So,
you saw a love connection in progress.
Good for him,
It's fun to watch. Yeah, it's fun to watch those bucks chase the does around, but it's pretty hilarious. I've watched a few does that just want nothing of it, like want no part of it, and they're just they're gone, and those bucks will chase them around, and they're running for their lives out there. So it's a fun time to be in the woods right now. This colder weather is probably going to change things a little bit, maybe make deer even more, a little more active out there. So could be an interesting weekend for deer hunters in the woods. It's been fun for pheasant hunters like myself too this week. We did finally take a break from the stand to go chase some pheasants around. The dogs were getting anxious, so I wanted to get them out a little bit, and I think I did a pretty good job of wearing them out. I took Meek on this hunt right here, and she was going through some real thick stuff. In fact, I shot this pheasant and it landed some real thick cattails that was just surrounded by barbed wire, and I was getting a little bit worried actually. And we went in there, and I didn't think Mika was in the right place, and I kept trying to call her over, and all of a sudden I can see I see her head pop up in the cattails, and here she's got the pheasant in her mouth already. So I've learned if you've got a dog that's got a good nose and she knows how to pheasant hunt, you got to trust the dog more often than trust your own instincts, because most of the time they're going to find the birds before you are. So a lot of times I just let Mika go because she knows what she's doing out there. And obviously in that situation, she found her way through. But we went back and forth across that barbed wire like 4 or 5 times. That's public land on both sides of that fence, and that's pretty nice. That looks like pretty new fencing, so I'm kind of surprised.
It's pretty new public land though too, so I think they just haven't gotten around to taking that down.
Yeah, and I don't know if they ever will. You never know, but that's in the middle, in some middle of some thick cattails. So I was a little worried about her running back and forth, and she did get cut up a little bit, but thankfully nothing too major. And then I took the little dog Tiny out and ended up shooting a rooster that had the old heart shot. Dan, both you and I watched that thing from the other. We were both walking down each side of a slough, and pheasants were bumping out in all directions, and I shot one, and it looked like I hit him pretty good. And he flew, and I was waiting to see something happen. All of a sudden, you could see him falter a little bit, and then he just folded up. And so they call that the old heart shot. And Dan, I wish we would actually cut that thing open to see if there was a BB inside that heart. But in any case, it's stone dead, but it was quite a ways down the field, and we went searching for it. And I bet we lasted about a half hour looking for that bird, because I hate losing pheasants. And it was what had ended up happening is we walked past it. It didn't go as far as we thought it did. We walked past it, just right past it upwind, and then fanned out and did a grid search back and forth, and finally, before we called her quits, we walked all the way back to the beginning, and on the way back, Tiny ended up finding it right out in the open, in the thinnest part of the entire piece. But in any case, we got it. But both dogs were pretty dang tired. Which one you got first there? Mika. Oh, yeah. So Mika was sleeping, and this is me. This is me with my guard dog. I came in from bow hunting, and she is out cold. Now, granted, her hearing is terrible. Like, she can't hear anymore. But normally she could smell or feel the floor move as I walk around her. But this is me delicately stepping over the dog to see if she would wake up or not, and she did not. She did not. And then Tiny was struggling a little bit too, and just trying to stay awake. And this is me. Tiny, did you have a good time? And good night. Tiny, do you want to go? You want to go do some more hunting? And good night. But that's what hunting dogs are for, and that's what they love. They love it as much as you do, and they give it their all, and that's why they get as tired as they do right there. So good times with both of those dogs right there. Dan, I guess going to do this real quick. All right. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the waterfowl migration, where we're at right now. We've got some news around the region regarding hunting and fishing and what's going on out there. And then we're going to tell the story about the Jordan buck. If you haven't heard that story yet, it's an amazing whitetail story from our region right here, Minnesota and Wisconsin. So we'll have that story coming up, plus Joe Henry and Erik Osberg all on the way.
Ice fishing season is here. This winter, plan a trip to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Not only will you have the chance to catch their legendary perch, but this year, Haybale Heights has been catching big walleye after big walleye. And they're doing it from a mobile, comfortable snow bear. No matter how cold it is outside, you're warm and toasty on the inside. Learn more and book a trip today at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com.
All right, we're back. Smash that like button. If you like what you see, please like and follow us and share this with your friends. Whether you're listening to this on the radio station, don't smash your radio. I should clarify. If you're listening to it on the radio station,
that's aggressive. Don't
smash your radio. But if you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or wherever, please like and follow us. I appreciate it. Coming up, the story of the Jim Jordan buck here in just a little bit. First, though, going to give you a waterfowl migration report. Shot my first ringbill the other day. Kind of surprised at that. Normally, ringbills are thick, and we're shooting them all over the place. And granted, I guess I haven't been hunting a lot of big water, but there's Mika bringing back a ringer for me the other day, a real nice drake. We had about a flock of about 6 that came into the decoys, and we dumped 3 of them with me and my buddy Jason. So that was a lot of fun. A lot of snows have moved into North Dakota. South Dakota is loaded with ducks right now. And Dan, you're hearing about reports up north in Minnesota?
Hey, guys are blasting away golden eyes on lakes like like Leech and Winnie. And I just thought of this right now. 2 Brant got killed on one of those lakes today.
Interesting.
By a couple college kids up there. I saw Thor Nelson and Ryan Donnell had a couple Brant, so congrats to you guys. Pretty cool.
Wow, that's way cool. Yeah. I feel like up around that area up there, you hear about like a sea duck or something. There must be some sort of migration
those
pattern.
big lakes. You got the Mississippi River and big lakes.
I suppose, yeah. Cool. That's way cool. All right. Speaking up in northern Minnesota, there was a recent poaching case on Lake of the Woods.
Yeah, 4 individuals. The game warden took a break from checking deer hunters, and 4 individuals are charged for over the possession of walleyes and saugers on Lake of the Woods. They had 48 fish over their limit. That's a lot.
Bad deal. Also, when you're deer hunting, always know where you're shooting, because there was a story of a slug entering a house.
Yeah, a slug went through a house, and it says it was right at head level, too.
Oh, boy.
Stevens County, it says it right at head level, and could have been a absolute nightmare if somebody had been in the wrong place, wrong time. Pretty fortunate that nobody's injured. But yeah, wear your orange, shoot, know where you're shooting, and what's beyond what you're shooting at.
Don't forget to send us your pictures and videos from your outdoor adventures. We'll hook you up with some free stuff from the Sporting Journal Radio store. Chad Malloy sent us these 2 photos from their deer hunting opening weekend last week down in southeast Minnesota. That's Chad's brother Josh Malloy with a nice buck, and right there's Chad's uncle Don Eversman with a nice deer that he shot as well too. Chad, I noticed you didn't send us a picture of your buck. What the heck? Congratulations, Chad. We'll hook you up with some sweet stuff from the Sporting Journal Radio store, including mugs like this, I hunt and always will, hats like this, or even hoodies like this one. Go to sportingjournalradio.com for more.
852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties, all in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX.
All right, now we're going to head up to Ottertail Lakes Country to check in with Erik Osberg. Erik, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I hear you are on the road, and you're headed. I thought you were headed out to chase big bucks around, but you're doing something else today.
I'm giving blood today. Yes, I'm in Bluffton. My friend Molly Costin is running a blood drive in Bluffton, so I'm giving blood today.
Very cool. Is that just going on for that day, or will it be going on after today?
Nope, it's a one-day deal. She does this once a year. Obviously, there's lots of blood drives all over the place, and apparently there's a shortage of blood too. So I'm doing what I can to help.
Sure, that was on November 11th. So, well, thank her for doing the blood drive, and good on you for going and donating some blood too, Erik. You shared a picture, or your social media person shared a picture the other day on Facebook of a giant buck getting shot up there. Now, I've known about Ottertail County as being a good place to deer hunt. Of course, it's kind of sneaky in Minnesota because everybody thinks of the southeast as the place to go for giant bucks. But you got a few of those big giants walking through your woods up there, don't you?
We've got a lot, actually. Matthew Brewer from North Country Guide Service, he wrote an article for Game and Fish magazine in 2019, and they examined trophy bucks, right, per county. And Ottertail County, at least according to that data that they had in 2019, Ottertail County was named the top county for trophy bucks in the state of Minnesota.
There's big ones. We got the right landscape for it. A lot of ag, so there's a lot of food up there, a lot of trees, and you got those rolling hills. So you've got habitat suited for growing big deer. And then what you also have up there, too, is kind of a collective mindset from a lot of the deer hunters on allowing some of those deer to grow big. I mean, you've got a lot of different opinions, as the entire state has a lot of different opinions on what bucks they should shoot or what does they should shoot. And if it's legal, it's hard to argue with them. But at the same time, when you can get a coalition of deer hunters that want to grow big deer, that allows you to shoot bucks like this one right here, that Tyson Barthel shot there. That's a great deer, Erik.
That is. And, to each their own, but I know a lot of groups that when they hunt, if you're a first time hunter, you can, harvest whatever deer you choose. But after that, it's 8 points or bigger. The other thing that I would add that we have is swamps. Like we call them swamp donkeys up here. There's a lot of big bucks that burrow down in those swamps, and it's surrounded by trees. It's, you know what I mean? It's not endless swamp, right? Like there's hard ground right next to it, and I've and from a filming perspective, anyways, I've gone and filmed, swamp hunting, if you will. The hard part about big swamp bucks is getting them out, right? Like once you get them down, that's half the battle. And dealing with a deer is hard. Is hard no matter what your terrain. But when you're in the middle of a swamp, it adds another element to it.
Well, you got to hope that you're somewhere that you can use a side-by-side or a four-wheeler or something that can help carry the load for you a little bit. I'll tell you what, I just found it today, actually, as I was getting ready for this storm to roll through this week. I started putting stuff away, and I found I call it my deer drag. It's a harness that you wear, and it goes around your arms. You clip it in, and then it's got a rope off the back, and then you can tie that around your deer. And I've used that to drag deer out of woods like that when I can't, get some sort of vehicle in there. I also use it. Here's my tip for you, Eric. It's multi-purpose, and I've had that deer drag for a long time where I've drug a lot of deer out of the woods with, and then winter comes around, and then you sit there and drag your portable with this short rope with both hands behind your back, and you're sitting there working up a sweat, or you put the rope around one shoulder and you're trying to drag it along. I started putting that deer drag on, and then I got a little clip that I put on the end of it, and then I got my rope on my portable, and I just clip it right to that rope, and I can drag my portable hands free wherever I need to go. I
like that.
It's nice. It's handy.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were trying to transition to early ice, but early ice is not far behind.
As a matter of fact, I was.
The other day,
I'm a trained professional, Eric.
Okay.
Don't try this at home.
Okay, so I went muskie fishing on Tuesday. I don't know if you remember, but Tuesday was absolutely gorgeous. It was 50 degrees, zero wind, and on my way to the lake, I saw little puddles. They're not ponds. They weren't as big as ponds, but whatever smaller than ponds. But there was surface ice on some of the water in some of the ditches, and I was like, well, it won't be long now. And with the forecast, it looks like Thanksgiving is typically the measure of an early ice season or a late ice season. If we can get on the ice by Thanksgiving, I would consider that an early start to the season, or an average even. That Thanksgiving weekend, it's been, out of the last 5 years, we've been on the ice probably 3 of the last 5 years, Thanksgiving weekend. Obviously, all sorts of safety precautions go into early ice. You mentioned, ropes, right? And buddies and life jackets. And early ice, the best way I can describe early ice is it's not about being cool or looking cool. It's about being safe. Bring ropes, bring a buddy, wear your spikes on your boots, bring ice picks, all that stuff. But yeah, we're gonna be walking on the ice here if the weather stays cool, like the forecast says, probably in a matter of weeks.
And floating suits are nice, and I encourage people to get them. I finally got one. And it's nice to be able to float when you fall in, but it's getting out of that water and getting back onto the ice where a lot of the problems really happen. And having those ice picks or ropes or some way to get yourself pulled out of it is pretty important. And Eric, I'm excited about it, and I'm looking forward to ice fishing, but I'm not, like most of the time when I'm walking on early ice, it's because I'm pheasant hunting a slough, right? So when I break through, it's like 2 feet deep, and I fill my boots up with water, and I'm just angry and cursing myself for having cold feet for the rest of the afternoon. But I guess I should be excited. I know early ice fishing is usually pretty good.
It is, and the other thing I would say is it's not a race. You know what I mean? You don't have to be the first one out there. But yeah, again, with the small lakes that we have in the area and the panfish that we have in the area, this can be an ideal early ice destination. But pretty pleased with sugar on top.
Yeah.
Take a safety first approach, and there's times where, I mean, I've gone to a lake to go ice fishing because other lakes had ice, and it was wide open, right? Like I should have brought my boat type of deal. So you could go prepared, be prepared not to go, I guess is what I'm saying. You show up, if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't look right, live to fish another day.
How was muskie fishing?
We saw so many darn muskies, but none of them would bite. I was with Rand and Olson, Lockjaw Guide Service. We were pulling suckers, and I'll bet we saw 10 different fish come up and sniff that sucker. And the water was super crystal clear. It was almost tropical. We were in 16 feet of water, and you could see the bottom.
Cool.
And so we were watching these muskies, right? Like you'd Randon was using his live scope, and so you could see when they came in, and then you'd stand up and you'd look back and you'd be like, yep, there it is right there. What do we do? And we tried leaving the suckers alone. We tried moving the suckers. We tried casting smaller lures at the muskies to try to trigger them. But we just could not get one to bite. There was one fish that must have followed us for 400 yards. and he just, and we tried everything with that fish, but he wasn't in the mood. But it was a good day on the water.
Isn't that funny how you think if you go late season like this, everybody talks about muskie fishing in the fall and how good it can be. You go late season like this, I've done it. Like I've gone in late fall and like, oh my gosh, it's going to be unbelievable. This is a good lake for muskies. The conditions are right. And then you just swing and miss, right? That's just frustrating. It just goes to show, it's fishing.
It's fishing, and it's muskie fishing. I mean, muskie fishing is always hard. Yeah. So I hope that isn't my last day in the boat. I'm not quite ready yet.
Right.
But that might have been it. We'll see.
I put my boat in the shed ahead of the snow, just more or less because of the snow. But when I put it in there, I kind of looked at it and I said, I'm not done with you yet. I'm not done with you yet this year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But all right, Eric. Well, if people want to learn a little bit more about maybe making some winter plans in Ottertail Lakes Country, what should they do?
They should go to OttertailLakesCountry.com, and I would highly recommend booking a winter vacation. We've got tons of resorts that are open all year long. Go to OttertailLakesCountry.com, and you can find your inner otter there.
Looking for winter adventure? Might as well pick a place with over 1,000 lakes. Ottertail County, Minnesota is in the middle of everywhere, offers a simpler pace, and has something for everyone. Find your inner otter at OttertailLakesCountry.com.
Well, it's not quite time to give up on the open water fishing yet, despite the fact that the boat got pulled into storage here the other day. But it's not packed away for the winter yet, so I might try to break it out. So we're going to talk fishing and deer hunting right now with Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism. Joe, you sent me a snap the other day. It looked like you were chasing whitetails around. How was your deer season so far?
Oh, it's been so good, so good. Not necessarily because of what we shot. Just tell you what, man. Getting out in the woods, having to slow down, watching the chickadees, hearing turkeys, hearing pheasants, seeing swans, geese, diver ducks, seeing some deer. It just there's a picture of a swamp that I kind of overlook at a sunrise, and you can see some of the stuff that we're hunting. It's really just some neat terrain. There's so much wildlife around. Part of the tradition of deer hunting is just getting out there, right, and just taking wins in the little things that are so great. And Yeah, and we shot some deer. I shot a buck, just a freezer buck, a 4-pointer, and I'm really happy about that. It's just to be able to harvest an animal, and my cousin's wife, Karen Lund, boy, she shot a brute, Brett. She shot a good one, and it's kind of interesting. This area I hunt in central Minnesota. I don't hunt up at Lake of the Woods. I hunt in central Minnesota, where I'm from. It's kind of an area that's got a lot of. It's got some public hunting around it, and then all the private land is pretty locked up with hunters in it. There's a picture of her buck she shot. Dang. Nice 8-pointer, but I'll tell you something. So kind of every deer hunt has a story, right? And so she's sitting in a stand, and she notices some deer movement from the swamp. So she looks over there, and there's 3 deer, and one of them is this big one, and there's another smaller deer with it, a smaller buck, and there's a doe. And she said that she was watching these deer. Well, the smaller buck came right underneath her stand. Of course, she saw this bigger buck, even though it wasn't in range, it wasn't near her. So she purposely held off just in case she'd have a chance. So she said that big buck was in that swamp, and it was beating the heck out of a bush for about 5 minutes, just ripping it to shreds. That's awesome. And then it is cool. I just thought that was cool just all by itself. And then that buck starts walking out, and you can hear it splash, 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 because there's water in the swamp. So it's quite noisy. You could hear it. And my gosh, if it didn't jump the fence and go broadside right in front of her, she's probably shaken. And she put a good shot on it, and it ran, 40 yards and tipped over. And for the area we hunt, it's one of the biggest racks that we have seen. The racks just don't get real big in that area, at least that we've ever seen. And so it was kind of a neat hunt. Of course, she was real excited. In fact, at the time I was hunting a stand up in a field on the edge of the woods she was hunting. So I heard her shot, and she texted me. She said, I shot a big buck, and I'm sure I hit it, but I can't see it. It ran away. Keep your eye open, And so, of course, I'm always keeping my eye open for deer anyway. And, well, she texted her husband. So her husband came down, and he came walking down the chute, and he couldn't, he wasn't quiet, even though I had some deer in the field. He's like, Aaron Lund, you're not going to believe it. What have you done this time? She goes, do you see the deer? Karen, the deer is dead. I'm overlooking this deer. Wait till you see this rack. And, of course, you can see that picture of the excitement on her face that she finally saw this deer that she actually shot, and it was a darn nice deer. But, man, that's part of the tradition, part of the memory. It was just so neat to hear the husband and wife interact like that,
Well, that is a great deer, and the fact that it's an 8-pointer, I think is even better. I get 10-pointers, get all the glory, but a big 8-pointer is to me that's almost better than shooting a nice 10-pointer where you can shoot a big 8 like that. So that's kind of on my list, is to shoot a nice big 8-pointer like that. And when you describe the setting and the serenity around you while you're deer hunting, I took a little video from the stand the other day, and it was like I think I captioned it that I was in a real life Terry Redland print. Like it was like I was in the print, and I was watching it live and seeing inspiration for what Terry Redland would have on his mind when he was painting. You see things that you just don't normally see, doing other outdoor activities, or if you're stuck indoors, you're obviously not going to see that stuff. But that's one of the things I like about deer hunting.
But don't you think too that part of it is it's kind of your attitude going out? What does success look like for you? Does success mean that you have to harvest an animal, or is success the fact that you have the privilege to go out hunting? I mean, think about some countries where they don't have hunting. We have the privilege of going hunting. Most of us can find a spot to go hunting, if it's public or private. There's the Bret, the 4-pointer I shot, just a little buck, right? But what I thought one of the things was kind of cool about it is look at the front of those tines, how that thing's been rubbing on some different trees and stuff and bark, and again, just the uniqueness of every deer you shoot. I don't know about you, Bret, but when I harvest a deer of any kind, I really take reverence in the fact that I harvest that animal. I make the commitment to be responsible with the animal, and to enjoy the meat and to share the meat with loved ones, and all that good stuff. It's really a kind of a special deal, and I hope other people get the same kind of enjoyment out of deer hunting. I think most do.
Yeah, and when you talk about the definition of success, obviously I enjoy hunting no matter what the outcome is, but my stomach definitely defines success by shooting a deer. So it all depends on perspective, and you're right, and it does come down to respecting that animal after you do shoot it, because it becomes food. My mantra is that anytime you kill something when you're out there hunting, it's not just a dead animal or a dead bird anymore. It's your food. It's basically like you just plucked it out of the refrigerator section at the grocery store, and it's time to take care of it like you would any groceries. And that means proper processing and handling from there on out, and getting that animal cooled off and taken care of as quickly as possible. So thankfully cooler temperatures are coming after it was 70. What do we have, 71 or 72 on Saturday for opener day?
Too warm, period.
Yeah, it was like summer out there. It was
I saw you were killing mosquitoes.
Yeah. I had a mosquito Sunday afternoon sitting in the bow stand. I had a mosquito on my hand. I couldn't believe it. So it made me think about fishing a little bit, Joe, and it sounds like fishing is going pretty well up at Lake of the Woods.
It's really going well. And, we always say it every single year. Now we're unseasonably warm this year. We're probably behind a couple of weeks. Right now we are anyway. And that can catch up real quick. But, every year we say deer hunting. A lot of outdoors people are out in the woods, and here's a picture of Charlie Darmer and his girl. But, he went out on the river and just smoked them. And every year we talk about the same thing, that people that go walleye fishing during the deer hunting time are typically very well rewarded, whether it's big fish or whether it's number of fish. And right now we're seeing both. We're seeing really more numbers, though. Man, a lot of good fishing happening in the Rainy River. A lot of walleyes moved up into the river right now, and we're starting to get some snow up north. A little bit. I know it snowed last night. I talked to one of the resort owners and said the roads were super slippery, but that'll melt again, and boy, we're still going to have some chances for some open water fishing for a while yet. And you got to be hardcore to go in weather like we're getting now. We're starting to get some of the colder, more November type temperatures. But boy, I tell you, if a person has a desire to get out, there's still fish to be had. I will tell you this too. Things are setting up very, very nicely, because those walleyes are in many of their typical late fall haunts, which means when we get our early ice, whether it's the end of November, beginning of December, typically, those fish are going to be there. There's going to be a lot of fish to be had.
Yeah. Well, it's usually the guys that put in the work and put in the effort and go where I talk about it pheasant hunting a lot of times. You got to go where other people don't want to go, where it's messy, where it's hard, when it's cold, whatever. And you're usually rewarded for it. So if you go out there and put the time in when it's tough, it goes for fishing too. You can usually be rewarded for it. Not always.
I think the other thing too is sometimes it's just a matter of being the game. You're not going to hit a home run every time, but oftentimes by the time you hear about a 50 or 100 fish day, that window has passed. You almost just have to be out there and doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The more often you can be out there fishing, the more fish you're going to catch. And to catch the big fish, Joe, you got to go where the big fish are, and that's Lake of the Woods. And if people want to plan a trip up there this winter, what should they do?
You know what, Bret, we have all of our resorts, our sleeper fish house outfitters, and we even have that lodging availability finder. So if you're going on a busy weekend and need to put an email out to all the resorts and say, hey, who has openings, that's on our website too. And of course, that website is Lake of the Woods MN for Minnesota, lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
My parents built a cabin in northwest Wisconsin years ago, not too far from the Danbury and Webster and Luck, that area there, Frederick, not too far from the Twin Cities. And occasionally we'll drive up north of that area, and every time we go up there, my dad always points out and says, hey, that's where that Jordan buck was shot. And I'd nod and I'd say, I wish we'd see deer like that nowadays. The Jordan buck was a world record buck taken by Jim Jordan in 1914. This is the 100th anniversary of this monster, and the story about it is being retold. Now, to tell us more about this story, I went to Burnett County to talk to Mike Kornman. Mike, how are things?
Things are great here in Burnett County, home of the Jim Jordan buck.
How big was that Jordan buck?
I tell you, what's most impressive about those antlers is the mass of the antlers. The antlers at the midway up the antlers still are over 7 inches in circumference. It's incredible, and I mean it's almost the size of a pop can in circumference. That's really how wide it is. And then you add the main beams in length; they're 30 inches in length, and then I mean it's absolutely gigantic, it's one of those perfect storm bucks. Everything had to come together right: genetics, nutrition, and all those things for that buck to get that big. It's incredible.
And we're talking about that magical 200-inch typical whitetail. What did that rack end up scoring?
The official final net score was 206 and an eighth, with only like a little over a point deduction, which is also amazing because it's very, very symmetric, and there's very few bucks that have that kind of symmetry in the rack as well, and that's also very amazing.
Jim Jordan shot this buck in 1914. He didn't realize just how big of a buck it was. He just knew how much it weighed.
Yeah, well, I think it was in that era. People didn't pull out their iPhone and take a selfie and that kind of thing.
Right.
And I think it was pretty much when he pretty much just guessed how much it weighed and added a few pounds in there to make the story sound good. But it was a gigantic buck, I'm guessing probably around 250 pounds. But it was a gigantic buck all the way around.
Now, he shot it about a quarter mile from his farm. Whereabouts is this location? Are we giving out the location, or are we still?
Oh yeah.
Are we still hiding it from?
Actually, we're promoting it very well. Jim Jordan's house is on the edge of Danbury. Danbury's about 30 miles east of Hinckley. It's Highway 77 on the Wisconsin side, and he went took the railroad tracks south of town. The railroad tracks today is a state bike trail called the Gandy Dancer Trail, and it runs down from Danbury to St. Croix Falls. And him and his friend Ekus Davis went down the railroad there about a mile down the road and walked into the woods and worked back towards town. And he ended up shooting the buck right in some tall grass along the railroad. The buck had jumped up. He'd been tracking it, and a train whistle blew coming into Danbury and spooked the deer. He jumped up, took 3 shots with his Winchester lever action 25-20 caliber, and ran across the railroad tracks and down by the Yellow River. And he tracked it down there one more time and took one last final shot at it on the far side, north side of the Yellow River banks. And that's where it fell. And today, we have officially developed a self-guided hiking tour. You can walk the trail and experience and relive Jim Jordan's legendary hunt along the now Gandy Dancer Trail.
Oh, very cool. I didn't realize that you'd actually be able to follow in the footsteps.
Yeah, we have. This fall there'll be a self-guided walking tour map, and you can walk along on the Jordan Buck Heritage Hike. It's a great family thing to do, and you can relive that legendary hunt and see from the bridge over the Yellow River right where the Jordan Bucks fell. I mean, how often do you get to relive a legendary hunt like that?
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I've never heard of that before. I don't know if that's something. Is that pretty unique? Where did you get the idea for that?
Well, there's that long story of long route it took to actually become the world record, and to have this all happen right adjacent to a railroad grade, which is now a bike trail. It's just made for the story, to relive it, share it for generations to come.
Mike,
now people can do that.
And I want to talk about the story of what happened after the buck was shot here in just a second. But let's get back to this self-guided walking tour a little bit, where you can actually follow the hunt and walk in the footsteps. Can I carry my rifle with when I do that? Because I'm hoping, tell me there's still some genetics from the Jordan buck running around those woods somewhere.
I'm sure the genetics are. Hunting's not allowed on the Gandy Dancer Trail, but I tell you what, there's 100,000 acres of public land in the area, and it wouldn't surprise me if there is another Jordan buck out there. Periodically, you hear stories about a gray ghost wandering around the woods of just magnificent proportions, and it always gives me this wonder. It's like, wait a minute. Another one could be out there.
Oh, man.
And that's what keeps me going every year. I tell you what, that's why I'm out there in the Burnett County Forest and Governor Knowles Forest. I'm out there with my bow and with my 270 during gun deer season. And because, I know for me, I'm a passionate deer hunter, and I'm always looking for my Jordan buck.
Absolutely. Tell us the story, Mike, of what happened after Jim Jordan shot this world record.
Well, immediately after, he needed help because his friend was dealing with a doe that they shot earlier in the hunt, so he went into town to get some help. He came back, and the buck was gone. Can you imagine that, shooting a buck like that, and it was gone? And it must have flopped one more time. The 25-20 caliber gun is really kind of a pop gun, and they looked downstream 100 yards, and there it was, hung up on a rock. I mean, I tell you, I would have been out of my mind to come back to that. Well, Jim Jordan, he gave this buck over to a taxidermist in Webster, Wisconsin. And, of course, this is 1914. There wasn't a bridge over the St. Croix River west of Danbury, between Danbury and Hinckley. Just travel from Danbury to Webster was 7 miles away. That was a big trip.
Yeah, so you're telling me that hole in the wall wasn't there then? There was no
it was not. I'm still looking for some pictures from 1914 Danbury, because that would be quite the sight. The taxidermist moves to Hinckley without notifying Jim Jordan and completes the taxidermy work, and is out of communication with Jim Jordan, so he was needed to move. I think there were some health issues with his spouse, and so he put the Jordan buck neck mount up in his attic, and it wasn't found until later in the 60s. And the people who own the house, they put it out on a table at a rummage sale.
Oh boy!
And and they, of course, it was a big buck, but didn't think much of it. They found it in an attic. And so what was really interesting is a very distant relative of Jim Jordan's, Bob Ludwig, saw the buck and purchased it. And through the communications of the family, all of a sudden they heard the story about this, that Bob Ludwig had this buck, and Jim Jordan finally got over to take a look at it. He's like, "Oh my God, that's my buck!" And so it started coming back, and eventually the antlers, or the buck, was sold to another person out east, and I think it was late 60s or so. Officially, the Minnesota in Minnesota, they officially scored the rack. They didn't know who the hunter was at the time, so they scored the rack, and it originally came up with a score of 206 5/8, and they noticed the math error, and then it got corrected to 206 1/8, and it was recorded, and this is the Minnesota connection to the Jim Jordan buck. It was originally recorded as Minnesota record buck, world record.
Oh, really?
Hunter unknown, but it was known as the sandstone buck. Sandstone, Minnesota, because that's where the house is actually located with the taxidermist. So originally as a sandstone buck, unknown hunter, and that's where it stood for a number of years. And so that's it's still, like any good hunting story, people want to, was it picked up? Was it fun? Did someone shoot this? And people really wanted to know. People were curious, but just nothing was done. No one really knew the story on it. So there it sat for a number of years.
So this was actually listed as a Minnesota world record deer for a long time.
Yeah, for a number of years. How it really came back to Minnesota is the guy by the name of Ron Shera, who I think everyone's familiar with, was curious. He saw in the record book Hunter Unknown. He did a little research and started interviewing people, and that kind of led to the background led him to Jim Jordan and his family members, and he wrote about that story in 1977 in Outdoor Life magazine, and eventually all that research started coming to light, and the Boone and Crockett Club and the guys at the Wisconsin Buck and Bear Club started pulling together the information to put together a case that Jim Jordan was the hunter on what we now know as the Jim Jordan buck.
It's an amazing story, and just a monster deer. Where could somebody see it on display today?
Today, all you have to do is jump right across the river over in the Grantsburg, Wisconsin, at the Crex Meadows Education Center on the north side of town. It's a really good place to take kids and learn about the outdoors. They have a replica shoulder rack there, and you'll be able to really see how large that rack is, because when you see it in pictures, it just doesn't do the buck justice.
Well, that's great. Is there some place we can find a list of those festivities, maybe online, or find out more information about those?
Yeah, all you have to do is Google Jordan Buck Centennial or go to BurnettCounty.com/JordanBuck100. That's BurnettCounty.com/JordanBuck100.
Mike Corman, University of Wisconsin, Burnett County, thank you for being here and telling us the story of the famous world record Jordan buck. Because now there's actually a bigger buck now, right, on the world record. It's not quite the world record anymore, but it's got to be close.
It's the Hansen buck took the record in 1993. The Jordan buck is still the USA record buck, and that's still amazing that there's only one buck in 100 years. There's only one buck that's larger, and it's still the record, USA record buck, with all the wildlife management we have, all that we know about deer management, all these things. This buckshot in 1914 is still the USA record. That tells you something about Mother Nature.
And who says you need to go to southeast Minnesota or southwest Wisconsin to shoot big bucks?
That's right. They're
northwest Wisconsin, apparently.
That's right.
All right, Mike, thank you for all the information.
No problem, Bret.
Sporting Journal Radio is a division of Macaba LLC. If you've got a question, comment, or story idea for us, send us an email. Go to sportingjournalradio.com. While you're there, you can learn how to advertise on the show and visit our store for hats, hoodies, coffee mugs, and more. Go to sportingjournalradio.com.